Hi, everybody. Welcome back to the penultimate day of Anthropology 415, 593. We're going to go over the review guide for test number 2 today. Test number 2 is going to be on Friday. Jose, have you blocked out rooms for Friday? No. Can you do that for all 3 of them? Ed 130 is fine because I already have the code, but just send just send an email and make sure it's open. Okay. I made the test. There's like one thing that I haven't like officially fixed yet on that test. I'm trying to figure out the word count because I was trying to switch from number of sentences per answer to number of words. I have 150. I was like between 150 and 200 words. The only reason I haven't turned it on yet. I think I'm going to keep it at 150, but 200 for some of these is maybe better. I don't really know. What do you guys think? 150 or 200? Yeah. I'll make grad students do 200 about that. Okay. So yeah, here's the test. It's going to be, I'll turn it on as soon as we're done with class today. You're answering 7 of 9. Make sure to answer all parts. Each worth 7 points, and there's a bonus of 1, which comes out to 50 points. It's the same as the other one. If you answer more than 7, I'll only read the first 7. I'm not going to like overindulge myself. Because Canvas is wonky and I can't still figure out how to make it do a pick 7 out of 9 test, what I ended up doing was putting in a Word document. You pick the 7 you want, you answer them on another Word document, you just turn it back in the link instead of having like a pre-built test on Canvas. Just a couple other announcements. Like I said, we're gonna have that test on Friday. It's available through Canvas, or it will be as soon as this class is over. You're welcome to take it. We're going to have a room. I think it's Ed 130. We'll see by the end of the day what that is. I'll post an announcement. If you want to go there and take the test in person, that's fine. If not, you're welcome to take it at home, at the library, anywhere at your leisure. If you haven't turned anything in, especially papers, I think I only got 4 as of yesterday. Please turn them in. I'm trying to grade them all at once, or at least most of them at once. So turn them in and I'll grade them this weekend if you haven't already got yours in. After that, just don't turn things in so I can be done with this class. Hopefully after this weekend, I want to have everything graded, turned off, and packed up for the semester. We are meeting next week. It's required by the university. I'll be here. I make money to be here. We can talk about things. We can look at classes. You can, I don't know, watch me juggle or something. Anything like that, you're welcome to stop on by. It's going to be at the testing time instead of the regular class time. I haven't even looked and see what the testing schedule is because it's like those 2-hour blocks. They're a little wonky, but yeah, that will be happening next week, and then graduation, and then on to Belize for Jose and I. Okay. These are basically just from them. Hi, welcome. We're just talking about the test. I am recording it. Yeah. So, yeah. So the first question, let's go through the questions. The first question, we can go through this as well. The first thing you need to think about on your test, we'll print this out first, go through it, see if you know what each of these mean, if you have a good idea of what the difference between closed and open-ended questions are. If you don't, please come by my office hours and we can chat, or Jose and Matt can help you out with that as well. There's just a few of those, right? Because each one is about, I took like 2 or 3 different key terms from each question and put them up here. There's 9, so there's less than 30 of these reviews. The first thing you need to know is about your project. Most questions, not every single question, but I would say at least 6, if not 7 of the 9 questions has a component where it asks you to apply what you did to the question, right? So if it's a question about unstructured versus semi-structured interviews, not only are you going to tell me what the difference between unstructured versus semi-structured interviews is, you might talk to me a little bit about what you did or something like that, right? Or when it says interviewing challenges and solutions, I'm not just looking for a general idea of some of the challenges that come with interviewing, but maybe I might ask you for some of those specific challenges that you faced, right? So you want to apply it to what you did. Obviously, if you did the homework, you did the paper, you did the presentation, questions like that should be really easy, right? You're going to have lots of stuff to talk about. You're going to have really specific stuff to talk about too, you know? It'll be super easy for me to grade if I can see that, like, you have a really specific answer that obviously you had this specific problem versus you're just kind of talking generally about some of the things that might happen in interviews. So first question is all about compare and contrast unstructured versus semi-structures interviews, and then at least 3 specific challenges from your research that can impact your findings and how you might overcome them. Right? So thinking about, well, what do you think are some of the problems that might come with interviewing? Some of the challenges. What do you think? Time, right? Both getting the time to meet with somebody, organizing your schedules, as well as the actual time of an interview, right? Trying to get somebody to sit down with you for a half hour. Sometimes they don't have anything to say and it's going to be a really short interview and you have to, drag it out. Other times you're only going to have an hour and they're going to keep talking and you want to like wrap things up. So time's a big one. What's another challenge that might come from interviews? Is like literally question number 1 on your test, so you should think about it. Some challenges that might come from interviews, preferably from your own experience, and how you might overcome them. People don't want to answer it, right? Especially if it's like a sensitive material or something, something that could get them in trouble. And what might you do to mitigate that? Safe space, confidentiality, all that kind of stuff. You might also have the problem of people saying, I don't know, right? And just being like kind of shallow interviews and you have to work to draw them out. Other times you might have people not have any knowledge of the situation, or they might, you might have a problem finding people. That's another interview problem, right? I have to find 5 people who are related to my project. How am I going to do that, right? So these are all different kinds of challenges. Think of not only the problems, but as well the solutions that you can do to fix that. Question number 2, we talked about surveys. I don't think anyone did a telephone survey. That's like old fashioned, right? Yeah. It's still widely used, but in this test question, I'm going to focus more on using face-to-face versus internet surveys, trying to just compare and contrast 2 things instead of 3. So think of this challenges and opportunities that come with each one. So what are some of the benefits of doing a face-to-face survey? Me actually sitting down with you and you filling out the survey, or me asking you the questions and you filling out. What's some benefits of that? Yeah, you can see about body language. If someone has a question and like, I don't understand what that question means, you can help them. You can also see who that person is, positionality wise, right? You can see that this is a, 60-something-year-old man versus a 20-something-year-old woman, right? Versus if I just send one in the mail or you just do it on the internet, I don't actually know anything about who that person might be. So what might be some advantages of doing an internet-based or digital survey? Did you do a digital one, Lauren?
Yeah.
What was some of the benefits of that?
More people answer.
Definitely, you get better response rates.
Yeah. Or
Yeah, you just click over the next thing and it's just a brief, distraction from whatever TikTok you were looking at last, and then you can move on. You're not like actually setting out a time. Well, we have to meet at 1:30 so I can ask you these questions, right? You can just do it whenever you want.
it's also responsive, like the negative downside of it. The answers make sense. Like they would say,
Yeah,
twice a day, and then they can do the value of water, but then they would say, I don't know, but it would make sense. You know what I mean?
yeah. So it was hard to follow up on this, right? Because they just did it online. You couldn't clarify anything, or you couldn't be like, well, why this disconnect, right? So you can get more stuff, but oftentimes it's a little maybe a little shallower, or maybe it's more prone to confusion or misunderstanding or something like that. So think about those. There's lots of those. And then you can think about what are at least 3 different ways you can get people to respond to your survey. How can you improve your survey response rate? I know some of you have this problem as well. I sent out 25 surveys and only 3 people wrote back or something like that. What are some ways that you think you could get people to do your surveys, a higher percentage of them, or more respondents? Mm-hmm. Yeah. Why do you think that is? Yeah, rapport. That's a great word to use, right? That's a shows that you've been paying attention. R-A-P-P-O-R-T, report. Mm-hmm. That's a great one. What's another one? How did you get so many, Lauren? I think you had the most of anybody in this class. It's very impressive. How did you do that?
I'm pretty social, so I know.
Yeah.
People on teams.
Yep.
And so by having that like connection.
Yeah.
Most people just, like, do it as a paper.
Yeah, right. Use.
Hey, I'd really appreciate if you answer this like pretty soon.
Yeah, so you use your personal connections, and also you use the technique called snowball sampling or ask a friend, right? So you ask people that you know, and you kind of tap them to coordinate the surveys for you, right? So you ask the captains of each team, and then that let the team, know that this was an important thing for them because their captain was asking, right? So there was this appeal to authority that you were able to draw on. What do you think, Kathy? Did you have one? Yeah. Yeah, that's a. How many do you?
And then I have like 10 responses, but that's my dad.
Yeah, how many do you think actually got sent out? Like total?
Well, it's on the website that 63 people opened it up.
Okay. So you're just under a third, which is, I think, pretty standard. If you ask 10 people and you got 3 people, that would be right around the same. So asking a lot of people, right, is going to increase your probability. There's lots of other ways that you can do this, but that's some good ideas for you to think about for the test. Anybody give any prizes, gifts, pens, a dollar bill, anything like that? I often get that in the. For what?
I said I'll forgive you.
The most valuable currency, right? Question number 3 is again about surveys, thinking about how survey questions can be misinterpreted. What are some examples of that?
Wait, what was the question?
How can surveys, especially ones that you don't give face-to-face, what are some problems with misinterpretation you might face? The people not understanding your questions correctly. Yeah, right. There might be a disconnect where you see that there's something wonky, but maybe the question was worded in such a way or written in such a way. Maybe it was your word choice. Maybe even the order of questions can have a bit. What? How can survey questions be misinterpreted by your audience? Anything from your wording to what order it goes in or anything like that, right? If you ask, how many times have you been to the doctor in the last year? Pretty easy survey question. How might that be misinterpreted? Which doctor? Does an acupuncture count as a doctor? Does a psychologist or a psychiatrist count as a doctor? Does yoga count as a doctor, right? Or yeah, it's recorded.
Okay, so I put some problems you might face are what orders question you would give. That's all I got from what you said.
Yeah, or maybe the word choice that you use. I also ask you in this question to think about open-ended versus closed-ended. How might those have problems as well? It isn't a question. How might both open-ended and closed-ended questions be subject to problems or misinterpretation. How about open-ended questions first?
You get bland answers.
Yeah, kind of bland answers or answers that like aren't really correct. You know, people can write anything in the box. You know, you can say, what do you do for your job? And you're like, I'm a dreamer. Well, like that doesn't really help me. I'm glad for your self-esteem that you're a dreamer, but you know, not a job. It's not on my list of jobs. There can also be, you know, people feel overwhelmed, right? I don't really know what to put here. I don't understand, you know, how to succinctly put this into an answer. What about close-ended questions? How might those be problematic? How might those be misinterpreted?
Maybe something they were gonna answer
Isn't a choice. Yeah, right. Maybe you didn't give them a none of the above choice. Maybe you ask somebody, what's your income? Is your income between 10,000 and 40,000 or 50,000 and 100,000? Why might that question be problematic? Yeah, if you're above or below, what counts as income? Well, I don't work for a living, but I have all these stocks and they just give me money every month, right? Is that income? How do you count that? You could ask somebody, you might even find these questions like might be really easy for you. Tell me where you live. What's your address? Why might that be a hard question? That's an open-ended type question. Why might that be hard?
they don't listen.
They don't live somewhere. If you're couch surfing, if you're bumping between a number of different places, or if you're a college student, do you put where you live in Portales or do you put where your parents live in Albuquerque, right? I still get mail at my parents' house in Orlando and I haven't lived there for 25 years, right? Until I moved here, I was still like a voting citizen of Orlando, even though I hadn't lived there for 20 years, right? Other things might be tricky as well. Like if you only close-ended questions, if you ask somebody, what's your gender, male or female? Check a box. Super simple, right? Why might that be a problem? And it's not even something considered 20 years ago, I would guess. What are you saying, Taylor?
Not everyone fits into those boxes.
Yeah, right. Not everyone fits into those boxes. Maybe I don't identify as one or the other, and I feel constrained by the choices that you give. There's lots of ones you can put. So you can think about what steps you might take to avoid those misinterpretations. Always give somebody, especially in a closed answered question, a none of the above or something else, or you know, some kind of I don't know type question, just so you can get, you know, force someone to pick, well, you know, I really make $10,000 or $6,000, but I guess I'm gonna put this $10,000 to $40,000 box because it's the closest one, but you know, that doesn't really work. The next one's about cultural domain analysis. There's 5 different types of cultural domain analyses listed in your book, and we've played all 5 of these different games, so you should go back and check them out. Free list, what's that one? Yeah, I was over in education yesterday because they have free popcorn over there on Tuesday, which is always really fun. And they were doing an activity of free listing. And I was like, oh, I know what they're doing. And it was like study tips or something like that. And they were asking people, well, what's the top 5 study tips you can tell your students to help them succeed in class? So what would be 5 study tips you might give somebody? First year college students. Yeah, flashcards. Do your homework. Was that? Speaking out loud in class. Asking questions. Showing up. Know your professor. That's a free list. We just did one. Congratulations, right? So you understand what a free list, and this is popular in lots of different things. My favorite's Family Feud, right? Top 5 answers are on the board. Places you might go with your family on 4th of July or something like that. That's how they gather those answers, is from a free list. And you oftentimes will use a free list, the answers you gain from a free list, to do the other types of things. Sentence frames are the second one. We didn't spend a ton of time on that. We should have, they're pretty easy to figure out. A sentence frame is going to be something like, is blank a kind of blank? Sentence frames, right? So I went to the zoo yesterday with my little boy. Is blank a kind of zoo animal? That's a sentence frame kind of question. And I might have flashcards drawn from a free list that says, give me your, you know, top 10 favorite animals, right? So I go through my cards and I ask you, is a lion something you might find at a zoo? Oh yeah, like a classic zoo animal. Is a turkey something you're going to find at the zoo? Yeah, it's kind of a lame zoo, right? Maybe after Thanksgiving, the liberated turkeys. Is a goat? If you live anywhere else, no. If you live in Clovis, then you definitely, yes, there's a lot of goats at that zoo, right? That's a sentence frame kind of question. You can also do it for linguistic stuff. I thought this yesterday. I like stubbed my toe. Or no, I was looking for my keys. I was like, where are these? My kid. Where are these blanking keys? Right. So we want to cuss them. What kind of words might fit in that sentence? Certain words will fit, other ones won't. Right. And we can all think about it. We don't have to yell them out. Sure. But are there other ones? Freaking. That fits in that sentence frame. What else? Where are my blanking keys?
Car keys?
Well, yeah, but with the ing on it.
Where are my car keys? Driving.
Yeah, I guess without the ing. Where are my stupid car keys? Where are my damn car keys? Or anything like that, right?
I feel like we just custom practice.
Well,
Your survey is gonna hear about this.
yeah. Use the D word in class. It's pretty bad. My grandma will be vexed. Right? So you can do that. You can think about, or names, right? Which is blank a girl's name in America, right? And I can go through a list. Is Cecily a girl's name? Yes, that's definitely a girl's name. Is, well, I don't know, Bailey, right? Is Corey, yeah. Or for a guy's name, is Leslie a guy's name? No. One of my favorite comedy actors, Leslie Nielsen, right? Police Academy or Police Force movies or whatever it's called. Lethal, not lethal, what do you call this? The Naked Gun movies, right? And airplane movies. Leslie Nielsen. Or the guy who made Saturday Night Live, Lorne Michaels. Is Lorne a male name? With an O, yeah, right? But you can ask people those kind of questions. And they can tell you, is this fit? Another one you could do, a third kind, is a triad test, right? I give you three, and I tell you, pick the odd one out, right? And I do this for all my possible combinations. I can do this with animals. Animals are my favorite because they're easy. I give you three animals, a cat, a dog, and a lion. That's a tricky one. Which one is the odd one out? Why? Not a feline. Is there another right answer? Why is lion a possible right answer? Yeah, it's not domestic, right? And so you can kind of run these tests with different combinations of animals, and you can kind of start to understand how people mentally group it, right? Am I thinking about domestic versus wild animals, or am I thinking about like a Linnaean system of taxonomy in which cats are much closer related to lions than they are to dogs? You can do this with all kinds of things too. Different agricultural techniques, different forms of, things that you might do for fun or anything like that. Pile sorts, this is probably the one that we did in class the most, right? Where you start with cards from your free list and you have someone put them in piles. So put them in N-1 piles. I'll give you 9 piles, put them in 8 piles. Now put them in 7, now put them in 6, 5, 4, 3, and 2 piles. And this relates to the next question number 5 about taxonomic trees and how you can take a pile sort and make it into a taxonomic tree. What is a taxonomic tree? Anybody? Yeah, like this. Uh-huh. And so, yeah. So I can see that maybe like, I don't know, goats and sheep are the closest over here. And then if I go up another level, I'll throw cows in here. And then I can see that lions and tigers are going to be way over here. And I can start to understand something about how you mentally construct the world. You can think about what those diagrams that you can create with pile sorts, what they can tell you about the items, how they're related, and then how a specific pile sort from your own research, what you did, like whether you did bottles of water or types of brands of water, or if you did, ways to save water or anything like that. Talk to me about a specific thing that you tested with your pile sort and what you learned about your research question from that. Yeah. Uh-huh.
And we can put
That'd be great. Yeah, that's like even better. And especially if they were different, right? Like, so I did this and this person pile sorted these like this, and they were emphasizing uh price of water bottle brands, and this person sorted like this, putting all the foreign, Evian and stuff in one pile, and then all the domestic Zephyr Hills in the other, or something, right? So we can see there's two different mental models going on. And finally, paired comparisons, right? Thinking about how things might be related to each other, right? Especially like, is is this one like this one, or how are these two related? The question number 6, I'm going to think about inductive versus deductive coding. We did, yeah, pile sorts. Yeah, taxonomic trees. And you can find all this stuff in your textbook. It's going to be, and you'll have what's that? Yeah, it's all in your homeworks. It's all in the quiz questions. You got all this stuff. Inductive versus deductive coding. You can think about what are the differences there. What's inductive versus deductive coding? Mm-hmm. Yeah, one of them you have inductive is going to be where you, what was that? Yeah, your data, right? I'm going to go through my data and I'm going to find codes, right? I'm going to go with like a clean slate, no preconceived notions. And as I'm reading through, you're like, man, a lot of people are talking about corruption. When we were looking at those Facebook ads about, or Facebook posts about water in Roosevelt County, and I might make corruption a code, right? I hadn't planned on it beforehand, but it came from the data. Deductive is going to be the opposite, where you have a set of codes beforehand, right? I'm going to look through this material for gender. Right? I know my research questions about gender, about politics, so I'm going to have this code already in my mind, and that way I can go through and kind of figure out, how much of this is actually showing up. And in practice, you're probably going to do both, right? You got some ideas of your codes because you've already created a research question, you have a hypothesis of things that you're going to look for. But about what?
Because it asks, my research question was money or how much to spend on bottled water.
Mm-hmm.
So
Looking at bottled water, right? That's a great code, bottled water. Anytime bottled water shows up in your interviews, you're going to highlight that because your research question is about bottled water. You have a preconceived idea of what you should be looking for, which is fine. But if you're also going through that, you're talking about bottled water, and the pipeline keeps coming up because people are talking about how bad the water is. You might code bad water or pipeline as codes. You might not have thought of that beforehand, but you also are starting to see this kind of reoccur, and so you don't want to let that out. So in reality, a good research project should do both inductive and deductive coding. Think about the strengths and the weaknesses. What's the strength of just using predetermined codes? What's the strength and weakness of that? If I have a code list, this is often what happens if you're in a big project. If Jose were to join my, cacao project and I had him working on the same one as I did, I might give him the same list of codes that I've been using for 10 years and say, pick your interviews and sort them into these codes. What are strengths and weaknesses of that approach? That's fine. Yep. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
But kind of like predetermining
Yeah. Yeah. What show is it?
More girls.
Yes, I do know.
it just fits like, and have like a middle class where they like into the higher class, but they aren't.
Yeah.
The lower class, they aren't.
Yeah, I think that's a great example. And I go to the Southwest Popular American Conference every year. People do stuff like this all the time, right? So I'm going to watch all the Star Wars movies and I'm going to count the number of minutes. I'm going to tag things or code things based on, is it a male or a female speaking? And I can come up with a quantitative answer that males speak 86% of the time in Star Wars versus females are 14% or something like that, right? Those are codes that I could predetermine beforehand based on my research. I am studying gender in Star Wars, and so I know one of my codes is going to be gender. What might be a problem with having a predetermined set of codes? What about your Gilmore project? What was that? Yeah. So it's such an interesting show, and I've watched just way too much of it because just so much of it. Gilmore Girls. It was like from the 90s. Are you watching the old Gilmore Girls or like when they brought it back for Netflix? The old ones? Uh-huh. So you know a lot about Gilmore Girls, right? And class. So here's a question for you. Is Lorelai high class or low class?
Low class.
What? Lorelai, the main character. High class or low class?
I can argue this all day.
This is a really interesting question, I think.
Like, she was born into a high class society and she was raised in a high class society.
Yeah.
She is.
Yeah.
She relearned like no, I see your point. She was raised in a
We got like 10 minutes, so we should probably go through the last 3 questions. But I think it's a great example, right? 10 minutes, that's all we got. But yeah, it's a great example, right? How do you count class? Does she live in a mansion? No. But did she grow up in a really rich, environment? Does she know about how to act at parties? She's purposely rejecting this stuff. So how do you measure class? Is it education? Is it wealth? Is it, all these other factors? Is it manners, right? So it can be really difficult to sometimes code these things, right? How about inductive coding? How might that be a problem? What are some of the strengths and weaknesses of inductive coding? Of picking your codes from the material and not having a predetermined code list. Both strengths and weaknesses.
Inductive.
Inductive. Yeah, that maybe you're not. I don't find anything on gender, right? Even though my research question is about that, I didn't come from that, so I don't have anything to speak to it. Or I'm going to pick all this different stuff. Or especially if you're using multiple people are kind of working on a project, and you each remember I gave each of you that set of Facebook posts. You might all pick different codes, and then it's super hard for us to compare our results, right? If I give all of you a different Star Wars film, your episode 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, whatever, and I say code it for male versus female speaking time, we can have a pretty good comparison. There might be some differences, is that alien a male or a female or something else? But in general, we could compare our results and say that, well, in the new Star Wars movies, there's more speaking time because Rey is a main character or something like that, right? Versus the old ones. But if I let you pick your own codes and we try to compare episode 3 to episode 5, and you've talked about gender and you've talked about class, then it's hard to compare this.
But a strength, and then you have a better overall comprehensive knowledge, and then you do another code.
Yeah. And so oftentimes it's both, it's always a both. Anytime somebody asks you which is better in anthropology, usually the answer is both. It just depends on, what you're doing with it. We don't have much time, so I'm going to go fast. Digital anthropology, strengths and weaknesses. What are some benefits of doing an online type research project. Right? I thought that was really interesting, like when the water went out in Portales, right? You could kind of get a bird's eye view of what people, at least on Facebook in Portales, right, a certain demographic, were saying. Even if you weren't actually there, you can see what's going on. You might also be able to do research in a place you aren't. I love now working in the 21st century. I can get on my phone or on Messenger or something and text somebody in San Jose, Belize, and be like, hey, what are you guys doing down there? Who's the new chocolate producer? Or what are you guys doing for Christmas? Or anything like that. I can get a lot of information. I can also talk to a lot more people. If I'm going to do a survey and I'm going to do face-to-face, there's only so many that I can do. Bernard says you can only do about 300 a year and you're going to be so burned out by the end. Versus if you do digital ones, you're going to get thousands or tens of thousands of them, right? What are some challenges that might come from doing a digital-only project? If I only do online and I don't have any in-person component. Yeah, right? Because you're not actually part of that community, right? Uh-huh. Yeah. It could be sarcasm, right? Or you can misinterpret it, or I don't understand the relations. Like maybe the city councilman is your brother-in-law and you're always giving him a hard time. You're like, yeah, you're an idiot, right? Which might have a very different interpretation since you know him versus if it was just somebody else and you're an idiot, right? You don't actually, it's hard to know. And a lot of what we do in ethnography, especially in-person ethnography, is based on like those other senses, right? Like being immersed in a situation gives you a lot more information than just doing something online. Right? If I'm going to write about, do my paper on Maya cooking, right? I want to learn about cooking techniques. I could do an online survey, ask all the old Maya ladies in my village, fill out this survey online, get on your phones and tell me about your favorite meals, right? What might be missing from that compared to if I actually go there and apprentice with old Nachi, who's grandma in the village, who can show me how to cook all this food.
Don't get the full experience.
I don't get the full experience. People might leave things out. There might be like an obvious step that everybody there knows to do. Like, oh, you gotta like wash your chicken in in lime or something before you put it in there. And it's so obvious that they don't even bother to put it in the step-by-step instructions or something like that. So oftentimes we do both, right? If you're doing an online project, it's good to have some kind of in-person component, even if it's not your full one, just so you can have a grounded idea of what's actually going on. Exemplar quotes. What are exemplar quotes? Yeah, they're examples. And why are they important?
Exemplar what?
Exemplar quotes. You had residents' feelings? Yeah. And why are those better than just saying the people of Portales are unhappy? I can write that. Why am I throwing a quote in there along with that? The people of Portales are unhappy. Kathy, resident of Portales for so many years, says the water here has gone downhill since I moved here. Why is it better to have that quote? Because what? It's validating, right? It supports it. It makes it look like I'm just not making stuff up, right? It's the same way that, when you're doing, especially with qualitative research, those quotes are your data. It's the same way that when you're doing quantitative research, if I say lots of people in Portales get bottled water, it's not a very strong statement. If I say 83% of Portales residents get bottled, that's a strong statement, right? Because it's a number. That's a quantitative piece of data. And for a qualitative research, we're often, we do a lot of that in cultural. Exemplar quotes are our data, right? Saying that, Dr. Stanley, resident of Portales, says this, this, and this is going to be a lot stronger argument than just kind of making a general example. So think about at least 2 different exemplar quotes from your own research, right? Something that you put in your paper, how you use those quotes, and what they added to your paper or your presentation beyond just kind of giving a general overview. Why was it important to use those quotes? And the last question is about analyzing non-textual sources. We did a lot of, especially in the digital, looking at coding of, look in this Facebook group and I'm going to code for, income or gender or whatever. We also can do that in our transcripts. We can do that in our participant observation field notes. But you can also do this for non-textual sources. You can code images, you can code videos, you can code a Facebook page or a website, or an audio recording or something like that. So talk about at least 2 non-textual things that you used in your research. Did you use a meme? Did you use a video that you found on the internet? Was there a recording of the city council? Was there a poster? This is a great one from my research that I really like. I was writing about like Maya modernities or whatever. And there's this, in the town of San Ignacio, there's this mural, and it shows like the town in the old days, Maya pyramids, and then during the logging era when people were cutting trees and selling them in the global market. Then there's a today panel, and then the last one is like this Belizean village with rocket ships and space stations and things like that. And it was like their view of the future. And so it was a great resource for me to use in my work beyond just like asking people, what do you think about the future, right? This is a great image which shows people's understandings of where they want to go and what they want to do. So think about non-textual sources, whether you use the meme, whether you use the video, whether you used an image or a picture or anything like that, how you use those and what maybe are some of the challenges that come with using non-textual sources. How might it be harder to code a non-textual source than a textual source? Yeah, right. If I'm doing a textual source and I want to look for corruption, I can Control F, search the word corruption, right? And I can see every time it shows up, I can highlight that quote, and it seems pretty straightforward. But if I show you a picture, and I was like, does this picture show corruption, right? Unless it's like somebody sneaking money in an envelope to one of their city councilmen, it might be harder to interpret, right? If I show you a picture of the rotted out pipes in Portales, is that corruption? Well, for some people, no, it's just that pipes are broken. And other people, they might see it as, oh yeah, that's a great example of our corrupt city government and how they don't fix things or whatever. All right. We are about out of time. Are there any other questions? Do you feel pretty confident in answering those questions? It's going to be pick 7 out of 9. For undergrads, it's going to be 150 words minimum. It should be pretty easy because there's like 3 subparts for each question. So just make sure you answer all of them, complete sentences, good grammar, all that good stuff, and you'll get full points. Yeah. Less than 5 minutes. I just wanted to go through it and practice it with you guys to make sure that like all the questions work. If there was a question where you all looked at me blankly, I might change it a little bit, but it seemed like all those questions were doable, right? Yeah. Okay, so I'll turn it on right after this class and you are free to do it whenever you would like. And if you want to if you're really interested in issues like, is Lorelei high class or low class, I would love to recommend Dr. Schmidt's media class, which I saw that you were in the other day. Yeah, sociology of media. And that's the kind of stuff they do over there. You're talking about pop culture and media and then looking at like an analysis of that. So good. All right, I'll see you all on the test on Friday. Thanks.